Hey everyone, we are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Yo, Street Hoops family, did you just see that? Pause it, rewind it, watch it again, because what you are looking at right now is not a normal post-game press conference. That right there is Stephanie White, one of the sharpest basketball minds in the game, choosing every single word like she's defusing a bomb. And the bomb she's defusing, the idea that Caitlin Clark, the most important player in women's basketball, maybe in a generation, just walked off the court twice in the season opener with some kind of back issue. I'm Dre Fiver, this is Street Hoops, and we are not waiting a week to talk about this. The 2026 Indiana Fever season is 3 days old, and I already have questions. Big ones. Let's get into it. Here is what we know. On May 9th, in front of a sold-out Gainbridge Fieldhouse, because it is always sold out now, that's what Caitlin Clark does to a building. The Indiana Fever tipped off their 2026 season against the Dallas Wings. This was supposed to be a celebration. This was supposed to be the coronation of a franchise that finally has all its pieces healthy at the same time. 296 days. That is how long it had been since Clark played a real WNBA regular season game. 296 days of rehab, of watching her teammates battle through the playoffs without her, of press conferences where every answer was some variation of, "She's doing great. We're being cautious." 296 days of Indiana basketball fans refreshing their phones for an update. And then, the buzzer sounds, the crowd goes nuclear, and Caitlin Clark is back on the floor. And then she walks off it. Twice. Now, before I get into the injury conversation, because we are getting into it, let me give you the full picture of what happened on the court, because this game deserved better coverage than it got from the national media cycle. Arike Ogunbowale dropped 22 points, Paige Buchers scored 20, and Caitlin Clark missed a deep three with a chance to send the game to overtime, as the Dallas Wings beat the Indiana Fever 107-104. That is a heartbreaker, a certified knees on the floor, staring at the ceiling heartbreaker. Odyssey Sims also had 20 points for the Wings, while Kelsey Mitchell led Indiana with 30. Aaliyah Boston added 23, and Clark finished with 20 points, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds. Those are not bad numbers. Kelsey Mitchell with 30, Aaliyah Boston with 23, Clark with 20 in her first real action since July. And the Fever still lost by 3. Dallas shot 59% from the field and 52% from three-point range. You want to know why Indiana lost? The Wings were simply on fire. That is the basketball answer. That is the honest answer. And look, the moment Clark stepped on that court, the entire media universe shifted its gravitational center. Everything from armchair diagnoses about how she was feeling physically to sweeping declarations about what one opening night loss means for Indiana's playoff chances. I understand that. She is the engine of this franchise, of this league's visibility, of the entire cultural moment women's basketball has been living in for the last 2 years. When Caitlin Clark sneezes, it makes SportsCenter. But today, I'm not here to talk about sneezes. I'm here to talk about her back. And more specifically, I'm here to talk about what Stephanie White said after the game. Because those words, measured, professional, almost too calm, deserve a much closer read than they've been getting. So here is what Stephanie White actually said, word for word, and I want you to hear it. "I think when we're all really young, we don't learn proper mechanics, and then it doesn't get exposed until something happens. And trying to get her body mechanically the way that it needs to go, this is going to be an ongoing thing. Not just her. We've had multiple players who have gone back." And then she added the reassurance. She wouldn't have played Clark 30-plus minutes if the situation wasn't under control. And you know what? I believe her. Stephanie White is not a woman who gambles with her players. She is calculated. She is careful. She has been managing this franchise with one eye on the championship and one eye on the long-term health of her roster. She is not going to stand at a podium and mislead you. But here is my thing. Here is the Dre Fiver thing that I cannot let go of. This is going to be an ongoing thing. Those are not the words of a team with zero concerns. Those are the words of a coaching staff that has built a management protocol around a player whose body, in her own words, gets out of line pretty quickly. Because after the game, Clark was asked directly about the locker room visits, and she answered honestly, the way she always does. She said it gets out of line quickly, that she just needed to get it put back in place, and that other than that, she felt great. I believe her too. She is not the kind of player to hide behind vague answers, but there is a meaningful difference between feeling great on May 9th and feeling great in late July, in August. in the grind of a September playoff run. And that gap, that space between the opening night press conference optimism and the brutal arithmetic of a 44-game season, is the conversation nobody in the mainstream basketball media wants to have out loud. Because here's the number that reframes everything. 3 separate injuries. 28 games missed out of 41 in the regular season in 2025. A player who never missed a single game across 4 years at Iowa, or during her entire rookie campaign suddenly spending more time in the trainer's room than on the court. That is not a streak of bad luck you simply write off. That is a body that went from a college environment, controlled workloads, structured rest, careful development, straight into the physical gauntlet of professional basketball. And the transition exacted a toll. The rehab road was long and grinding. It started in training camp last year with left quad tightness. 4 games into the regular season, a different left quad sprain. A month later, a left groin issue. Less than 4 weeks after that, the right groin injury that ended everything caused her to miss the All-Star game that Indianapolis itself was hosting for the first time. And then a left ankle bone bruise showed up when she tried to come back for the postseason. 5 separate injury episodes in a single calendar year for a player who had previously been one of the most durable athletes in the history of college basketball. That is a story with a sequel, family. And Game 1 of 2026 just wrote the first paragraph. Now, I want to be crystal clear about something before anyone comes at my comment section, because I am not here to play the role of the doom merchant. I am not here to tell you Caitlin Clark is broken, or that the Indiana Fever are a disaster waiting to happen. That is not what this is. The medical staff and coaching staff both confirmed clearly this was body maintenance, not an injury. Multiple players on this roster were making trips to the back during that game for similar reasons. Stephanie White would not have played her star guard over 30 minutes if she had genuine alarm bells going off. That is just not who Stephanie White is. But, and this is a significant but, the question I keep circling back to is whether a body that requires routine mid-game structural adjustment can hold its integrity across 44 regular season games while absorbing the kind of physical punishment that Clark invites by playing the way she plays. The drives into traffic. The pull-up threes from distances that most guards won't even consider. The relentless defensive attention that forces her to fight for every inch of every possession. Clark plays big and physical, even at her size, and her style is inherently high contact. You cannot play that way and manage a chronic back issue without someone, either Clark or the coaching staff, or the medical team making difficult decisions about load management that this market and this fan base will not be patient about. And here is the part that makes those decisions even heavier. The visibility numbers. Consider this. During a 2-week stretch in 2025 when Clark was sidelined, national television viewership for Fever games dropped by 55%. 55. You could lose more than half the viewing audience just by losing one player. That is not a team sport number. That is a one-woman economy. The league knows it, the Fever front office knows it, and when I watch Stephanie White standing at that podium, carefully calibrating every word about ongoing adjustments and body mechanics, I think she knows it too. That is the real pressure this woman is operating under. Not just the basketball pressure of a championship window, but the weight of an entire sports commercial moment resting on the structural integrity of her starting guard's back. Here is what gets lost in every single Caitlin Clark news cycle, and I mean every single one. The Indiana Fever are genuinely, legitimately, frighteningly good when everyone is on the floor. Not just good because of Clark. Good because of what has been assembled around her. And good because of what this franchise's other stars proved they could do when the biggest name on the roster was unavailable. Kelsey Mitchell averaged a career-high 20.2 points per game last season, not in Clark's shadow, not as the second option with a healthy star demanding the ball. While Caitlin Clark was sitting in street clothes watching from the bench, Kelsey Mitchell averaged 20 points a night and finished second in the entire WNBA in total scoring. She led this team to the doorstep of the finals. That is not a role player having a hot streak. That is a legitimate first option who has been waiting patiently for her moment. And when the moment arrived, she was ready. And on opening night against Dallas, she delivered again, 30 points, with a potential game-tying 3 at the final buzzer that nearly tore the roof off Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Mitchell's shot did not go in. Neither did Clark's desperation 3 before it. But those two women combining for 50 points in a one-possession loss to a Wings team that was shooting out of its mind tells you everything about the ceiling of this Fever offense when it is clicking. The league has not seen anything like this backcourt, between Clark's vision, range, and court manipulation, and Mitchell's elite isolation scoring and near-unstoppable speed getting downhill. Defending Indiana's backcourt is a genuine nightmare scenario for every other coach in this league. And then you have Aaliyah Boston, who has become, quietly and without nearly enough national credit, one of the 3 or 4 best all-around players in the WNBA. Boston dropped 23 points in the opener. She scored 23, collected 4 rebounds, dished 3 assists, and added 3 steals and a block. On her worst night, statistically, she is probably your 3rd best player. And on her best nights, she is the reason the Fever can play any style against any opponent. The improvements she has made on the offensive end, her ability to create for herself and others, her expanded footwork in the post, the mid-range game she has been developing, have taken what was already a formidable defensive anchor and turned her into an offensive weapon the league genuinely has to game plan against. Aaliyah Boston became the first player in WNBA history to sign an epic contract extension this offseason. That is the league putting a number on what she is worth. And that number said, irreplaceable. Because here is the other part of this story that deserves more oxygen. The Indiana Fever made the WNBA semifinal in 2025 without Caitlin Clark for most of it. Without their franchise player for 3/4 of the season, they still went 24-20 in the regular season, the best record in franchise history. They still won the Commissioner's Cup under Stephanie White. They still pushed the Las Vegas Aces, the reigning champions, all the way to a 5-game semifinal series. And in the decisive game, Boston was in the process of potentially carrying Indiana to the finals when she fouled out. Fouled out. The Fever lost by a handful. Their superstar was watching in civilian clothes. Their best frontcourt player was on the bench in foul trouble. And they still almost made it. That is a team that is not just riding the Caitlin Clark wave. That is a team with real depth, real coaching, real character, and a real score to settle. Which is exactly why the stakes for 2026 are so enormous, and exactly why the conversation around Clark's back situation is not idle drama. It is the central question of the entire Indiana season. Because if she stays healthy, genuinely fully healthy across 44 games, this roster, with Stephanie White drawing up the game plans and Mitchell and Boston shouldering the load and a deeper supporting cast than Indiana has had in over a decade, is capable of winning the whole thing. The talent is there, the experience is there, the hunger is there. The variable, the only variable that matters, is whether Caitlin Clark's body cooperates. And speaking of things that need to be figured out, there was a real analyst concern raised after the opener that deserves more than a passing mention. The chemistry issue. When a team goes to battle all season without its star and then gets that star back, there is inevitably a period of recalibration. How does the offense flow now? How do rotations shift? Who takes the big shot in the final 30 seconds? The woman who has been doing it all year? Or the woman whose name is on the marquee? These are not problems unique to Indiana. But they are problems that need solving before the Fever start encountering the top-tier competition that will show up in a playoff environment. The opener against Dallas was raw, uneven, the kind of game where the individual talent is obvious, but the collective rhythm is still getting its footing. Dallas shot 59% from the field against a Fever defense that Indiana's own head coach admitted needed to be more disciplined. Giving up 107 points in a home opener when your defensive identity is supposed to be a selling point, that is a conversation Stephanie White will be having with this team. The Fever played the entire 2025 season essentially without Clark. The role players built their games around a certain flow. Mitchell became the primary ball handler, the shot creator, the one everyone looked to in the clutch. Boston expanded her game in ways that fit that dynamic. Now Clark is back and the whole organism has to adjust. That is not a criticism. That is just physics. That is what happens when a generational talent returns to a team that learned to survive without her. The good news? Stephanie White has been through every variation of challenge this league can throw at a head coach, and she has made the playoffs every single time. That is not a coincidence. That is a basketball mind that knows how to adjust. Give her a few weeks, give this roster time to find its rhythm, and the Fever that surfaces in June and July will look nothing like the uneven team that stumbled out of the gate on May 9th. Clark herself standing in the post-game media area after a loss in Game 1, with a back that apparently needs regular in-game adjustments after 296 days away from the regular season, said the locker room was positive, said they had a lot to be proud of and a lot to learn from, said it was only one of 44. That is not a star making excuses. That is not a franchise player retreating into PR speak. That is a competitor who has been through a genuinely brutal year, who watched her team almost reach the finals without her, and who came out on the other side with what sounds like a genuine, renewed perspective. Her own words, said before the season even tipped off. She knows what was lost in 2025. She knows what this team is capable of when everyone is present. And she knows, maybe better than any of us watching from the outside, that Game 1 against Dallas tells you almost nothing about what this team will be by September. But here is where I land, Street Hoops family. Here is the honest Dre Fiver verdict after everything I've laid out for you today. The Indiana Fever are the most compelling team in women's basketball. Not just the most watched, the most compelling. Because everything about them is genuinely dramatic. The back-from-adversity star, the underrated superstar who carried the franchise solo, the historic inside presence who may be quietly the second-best player in the league, the legendary Indiana basketball coach with a championship pedigree who has never missed a playoff in her coaching career, the sold-out building every single night, the stakes that are simultaneously about a basketball title and about something bigger, about whether the cultural moment this league has built is durable, whether the infrastructure actually matches the excitement, whether a franchise can convert viral relevance into sustained excellence. The Fever need Caitlin Clark healthy, not just for themselves, for the WNBA as a business and as a sport. A 55% television viewership drop when she misses games is not a number that anyone with a financial stake in this league can be comfortable with. The answer to that equation is not to diminish what Clark means, but to build enough depth and enough alternative stars around her that the league's identity doesn't live and die with one player's lumbar spine. And the good news, the genuinely encouraging news, is that Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell have proven they are capable of being exactly that kind of alternative. This is no longer a one-woman show. It just needs everyone to stay on the floor long enough to prove it. One game, one loss, one back adjustment, 43 games left. The conversation has just started. That is the full, unfiltered, no smoke and mirrors picture of what is happening in Indianapolis right now. Street Hoops family. If you are tired of the highlights reel version and you want the real talk, the context, the questions, the story behind the story, you know what to do. Smash that like button, drop a comment below telling me whether you think Caitlin Clark stays healthy for the full 44-game season or whether the Fever are going to be managing her minutes deep into the summer. And hit subscribe so you never miss a drop from the realest basketball community on this platform. I'm Dre Fiver. Street Hoops, we'll see you on the next one. Peace!